Today we're going to work on assembling the three-bladed rotor head for the TREX550L and the 550X. I'm actually rebuilding a 550L right now, and I'm going to be starting a 550X. The three-bladed rotor head is going to wind up on one of them, so I thought we'd build the rotor head first. Obviously we've got three grips. I've already assembled two of them, so we're just going to go ahead and look at how you work with the third. So let me set these out of the way. As it comes assembled in the box, everything is already pre-assembled as typical. We're going to zoom out a little bit so I can let you see what we're doing here. We need to tighten up the add thread locker to the grip arms. I'm going to do that quickly. Got two bolts here for the grip arm. Obviously this process gets repeated 3 times for each of the grips. Okay, that was using the 2.5 mil driver, the 1.5 mil for the actual ball link on the end of the arm. Pretty straightforward. Here, okay, let me zoom a little bit on this if we can. And we're going to disassemble this. We're using a 4mm driver on this one. It'll actually come apart this way. You can pull the shaft out. I've got a spacer and a damper. So first thing I'm going to do is slide the damper back a little bit, and I'm going to apply a little bit of synthetic lube. I use the Triflow synthetic. The stuff that comes from Align is essentially very similar. I just happen to have this handy, so I'm going to do that. That takes care of the damper. Okay, on the head itself, bring this back in, slide this apart. Sitting inside here, just like any other Align, there is the inner race of the thrust bearing. Then I've got the thrust bearing itself. This is called the obverse side, where you can see the open face of the ball. The opposite side here. Then we have the side marked out. And then finally we have an actual thrust washer here. So what I'm going to want to do, sorry about if we lose a little bit of focus here, is I'm going to apply a little bit of synthetic lube, and I'm going to work that around through each of these bearings. Okay, put this back together. Apply a little bit of thread locker here. Shaft goes back inside the grip. Put this back in here, just sort of take my time. So we'll all fit back together again. As it starts to tighten down here, I can just use another driver to lock this particular thread and tighten that down. So we've got spindle shaft, damper, we've got a spacer, and then the normal bearing stack from a typical Align head. We've had to make sure we tightened up the grip bolts, the grip arm bolts, and the pitch link ball here on the end. So that gives us 3 completed assemblies here. Now as this rotor head gets assembled, what we're going to wind up with here is each one of these is going to assemble into the main rotor frame. And you'll notice I have a large bolt hole here threaded on the other side. What I've got is a collared bolt here. This has a long collar on it to take all the thrust from the spindle shaft, and that's going to get a little bit of thread locker and come in from this side as such. Okay, so that's the first of the 3. You'll notice if we can tighten up on this a little bit. Later on we're going to use these 0 pitch marks, and that'll be part of our setup. But for now what I need to do is replicate each of these pieces. That one threads in nice and easy. Okay, so now we check all the bolts. we have an assembled three-bladed head. Okay, now we're going to assemble the swash driver. This comes usually with one side loose and one side is actually tightened already. What I can show you here is it pops apart. There's a bearing inside each end. There's an aluminum collar inside here. If I grab this very lightly, I'm going to be able to spin this far side loose. Take this bolt out, tiny bit of thread lock. Now if you look on here, see if you can see it in the glare, there is a collar machined into this surface, so we're not going to bind up. I'm going to reattach that to this bearing, to the shaft in the bearing. This is all detailed in the assembly manual for how this rotor head goes back together. The Align logo goes out. Tighten that up. This is going to go back through the center of the swash. Opposite side, we're going to use just a little bit of thread locker, and we're going to reassemble. Okay, so I've got both Align arms out. The Align logo is facing out. Okay, so we have the assembled swash driver arm. Align logo is here. If you look on the outside, there's a number 6 right here. This is the outside facing part. What we're going to have to do is slide this over the rotor head like such. The Align logo is going to cross across where the main shaft is, and we're going to assemble. We need a 3x10mm bolt, and it comes with 2 tiny washers here, one for each bolt. Washer goes on first, and what that's doing is preventing the bearing from jamming. A little bit of thread lock. I'm going to come through and attach the swash driver here. It's going to actually cross across the main shaft like this. Another 3mm by 10 bolt. Tighten this up a little bit. Okay, so we've got our three-bladed head. We've got the 3 Align logos facing up. Each of the grip arms here, we've tightened up and Loctited 2 bolts in each, plus on the end here, the ball link. We've came in and we've put lube on the thrust bearing and the damper here. The head assembles from the inside. We've got the shaft coming out, spacer, the dampers inside here, and then everything else inside your bearing stack. Down here, we've got the Align logo out. The number 6 for the 600 or 550 head facing out here, and this crosses across the shaft. That is the 3-bladed rotor head for the 550 and the 600. The swash plate is here. This assembles essentially identical as every other one. We are going to have to come in and individually thread lock each of the ball links. The difference obviously between this and the standard swash plate, we've got 3 links going up to the head plus the 3 going down to the servos, and the difference is there's obviously only 1 swash driver arm connection. It's going to go here, so I'm going to go ahead and Loctite thread lock each one of these individual bolts here, and this thing will be ready to assemble onto the helicopter.